Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Frenchie's Art Gallery, located on historic Oak Street beside the Maple Leaf Bar. With over 3,000 square feet of space, it features a large gallery front room and Frenchie's personal art studio. Frenchie's Art Gallery is also connected to the Maple Leaf Courtyard, which is ideal for the New Orleans night scene. Frenchie's Art Gallery, 8314 Oak Street. Yeah, you're right.
Hey, don't forget my pimento cheese.
Of course. It's okay, I'll take it from here. Hey, the guy get a seat!
For the love of palmetto cheese.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Alexander, and this is our third show back after being gone for 2 years because of COVID, and I'm very excited. The first two shows were a lot of fun, and this one will be as well. I'll get into our guests in a second, but let's talk about what's happened right now, and let's talk about the LSU Tiger baseball team. Yes, they were hot at the end of the season, but they got to the SEC tournament. They had to delay because of rain, but they did win their first game against Kentucky, who beat Auburn. And then they lost to Tennessee, who is the number one team in the country. That was expected, but then they lost to Kentucky on Saturday. So that probably cost the Tigers a chance to host the regional like they always strive to do. But they don't have to go too far, Tiger fans. You're going up the road to Hattiesburg, Mississippi to play the number one seed Southern Mississippi Golden Eagles. They don't play them. They're going to play Kennesaw State because LSU's the 2 seed, Kennesaw State the 3 seed, but they'll probably have to go through USM if they're going to try to get to the Super Regional next weekend. Also, Southeastern. Can't say enough about Matt Reiser and his Lion team. This wasn't one of their banner regular seasons, but boy, did they get hot at the very right time. They got to the Southland Conference. They went through. They got UNO a couple times. They just beat McNeese twice to get to the tournament. And they have a winnable tournament as well. They are the 4 seed, but they're going to Auburn, the team that probably took LSU's chance to get the home regional. Auburn's the 1 seed, Southeastern's the 4 seed, so they're going to play those two this weekend. Also, how about the NBA Finals? These 2 months of playoffs, which I personally love. I'm watching at home every night. I know not everybody does, but if you're going to watch, right now's the time. Get on after it because it's Golden State, who has been their 6th finals in the last 8 years. The previous 2 years they had injuries and didn't even make the playoffs, but this will be Steph Curry's 6th time in, along with Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and they're playing a team that has no finals experience, which is very unusual. Obviously, Jason Tatum has made himself a top 7 player in the NBA. Steph Curry's already there. Steph Curry has the experience. They've had 123 games of finals experience. Boston has 0 players with any finals experience. That's only happened 3 times in the last 40 years. And I'm going to say this one thing. The last time it happened was 25 years ago when Michael Jordan's Bulls in 1997, after they won in 96, they had 134 games of experience, meaning all their players having finals experience, and Utah had 0. And Utah took them to the limit that series as well. But we have a great show for you today. We're not talking a ton of current or former NFL or NBA players or any of the coaches. We're going to talk golf in the beginning. I've got Kelly Gibson, a local New Orleans guy who was on the PGA Professional Tour for years, and he's done a lot of great things since. There he is with Jack Nicklaus. He's been around many presidents. We're probably going to get into that as well, but he is going to be on this show. Also, we are going to talk some Saints, and we're going to talk other sports, the Pelicans, because I have a couple nostalgic guests. I don't do a lot of media, but I've got Fletcher Mackel, and I've got Lyons Yellin, because we want to talk about what's going on now and I can't wait. Saints talk, Pelicans talk, LSU talk, all that coming up next on Primetime Sports.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Alexander, once again. Hey, last week and the week before, our first two shows back after COVID, we had NBA player Reverend Johnson. We had a couple college and NBA coaches. We even had Bobby Hebert and a couple others as well. But hey, this week we're going to change course. It's golf season. They've already had the PGA and the Masters. We got the U.S. Open coming up as well as the British Open. So I'm going to bring in a golfer, a guy that played on the PGA Tour. His name's Kelly Gibson. He's a New Orleanian and De La Salle grad. It's good to see you, man.
Good to see you.
How have things been going since COVID?
Everything's great. I've been really fortunate. Kind of a lot going on with our charitable foundation, and then I've got into developing some golf courses and spending a lot of time in Ireland right now.
Nice.
Nice. It's been very, very good.
We want to get in the golf course thing for a second, but I want to bring you back. I've had you on a couple times, but I don't think I've gotten into how you got into the sport. I mean, there's not a ton of golfers from New Orleans that have made it big. I know Shreveport's had Hal Sutton and David Toms, but you are one of the best that ever came out of this city. So I want to know how it all began for you. When did you get the itch to be a golfer?
I grew up the youngest of five in a family in Algiers, Louisiana, and
there you are, right there.
Started that's Lakewood, 1979.
Where they used to have the Zurich, right?
Yeah, that was the Holiday Classic back then.
Right.
Picture of that, 1979, I believe, is that photo. But I grew up. Everybody in my family were swimmers, and
wow,
me and swimming never matched up. It was one sport I was not really involved in, wasn't very good at it, and my dad played golf every weekend with a group called the Pigs, Plumbing Industry Golfing Society.
Oh, I love it.
My father's business was not too far from the studio. He sort of bought out the American Standard franchise for South Louisiana and Gulf Coast back around 1971, so I would go out and caddy for him. And I just fell in love with the game immediately. You know, every aspect about it was intriguing to me, and I was a pretty good athlete. Probably could have played a lot of sports, even at the, a couple sports at the collegiate level if I would have pursued it. I was just that type of athlete, and I just my primary focus was on golf. And my dad took me out to the PGA Tour event at Lakewood, and I remember the first time he brought me out there was 1973. I watched Jack Nicklaus and Miller Barber in a playoff.
Wow.
And everybody was pulling for Jack Nicklaus, and I couldn't really understand the concept of why they were pulling so hard for him, because I didn't realize how legendary he already was at 1973.
And you were only about 8 or 9.
Yeah, I was like 9 years old,
right.
and I was on my dad's shoulders, and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And then I had a picture from 1975 when I was 11 years old of Billy Casper. My mom pulled me out of school to go get autographs. And I got a picture of Billy Casper shooting 65 the first round. It was the last event that he ever won on the PGA Tour. And they put my picture in the Times-Picayune the next morning.
Wow.
And so I went to school, and I was like, okay, this is it for me. And on the back of that picture, my dad wrote, on this day, my son decided he was going to be a professional golfer.
That's amazing.
It's a pretty cool story. And then my rookie year, I got invited to
Your rookie year on the tour?
On the tour, 1992.
We might even have a card back then.
1992, fast forward. I got invited to the Moroccan Open by the King of Morocco.
Oh, my goodness.
Who Billy Casper was really good friends. So I'm on the plane, and I walked that picture up to first class, and I said, Mr. Casper, guess who this is? And he was like sitting on the plane going, you got to be kidding me. And I said, yeah, 1975.
Can you tell me when you were in Morocco? Because I was in Morocco briefly in 1992.
So the King of Morocco would have a tournament every year.
Like what month? Do you remember? Like, do you remember?
I believe it was in November.
Okay.
And he would invite, probably between, I would say, 12 and 16 players. And I was with the IMG at the time, and they were the #1 sports agency in the world. And so I was the last guy invited, pretty much. But I had so much fun. I went back the next year, and it was amazing to visit that country during that time.
I got to ask you a couple of questions. Off camera, we were talking about our childhood heroes, and your first two you mentioned were mine.
Yeah.
Pete Maravich, #1 by far. Basketball was my favorite sport. Archie Manning was a hero to probably all of us in the 70s.
Yeah.
Because football was new here, basically, and they weren't winning, but he was such a great guy and a great player. Now, I've been fortunate enough to work with Archie a lot. A lot of us know Archie, and he's just the greatest guy as well. And I wish I had, Pete Pistol didn't die at 40, but you you mentioned Jack Nicklaus,
Yeah.
and he is the greatest golfer along with Tiger Woods of all time. I don't think there's any dispute about that. But you've got to become friends with him.
Yeah.
And what's it like? You mentioned idolizing him when you were 9, and then you hang out. We have some pictures with you and Jack, and I know y'all know each other.
It was just amazing. I didn't really get to play with him until that's a great photo. That's the first day I ever got to really play with him, and that was in the '97 Memorial Classic, which is this week. And I called up Rob Noel, and there's an incredible funny story about Rob's interaction with Jack that day. But Mr. Nicklaus couldn't have been nicer to me. You know, I think it was the whole thing that he loved about New Orleans, that we sort of bonded over New Orleans.
That's cool.
So to speak, an English turn, and he just loved visiting New Orleans and coming here, enjoying the people and the food. And he made a lot of good relationships with some of the people with the Zurich Classic, which before then was Freeport McMoran.
Freeport McMoran, right.
And so he had a lot, you know, I had lunch with them probably more than I played with them, but he was always really nice to me and very helpful when we played. The cool thing about Jack that I tell people, I remember playing practice round at the PGA at Winged Foot.
Right.
And he's sitting there on the 10th hole, and he goes, "Boy, this hole sure used to be wide open," you know.
You got the accent almost down right there.
And I'm like looking at him going like, man, he's kind of losing it. Like there's trees everywhere. There's a house back there. And I'm going like, what are you talking about? Well, after the round, he invites me, you know, to lunch. And I'm walking upstairs in the locker room at Winged Foot, and there's a photo from like 1955, 56, and it was wide open.
Wow.
Pretty much cow field. And, you know, and
you had no idea before what he was talking about?
it was like farmland in New York,
Right.
And so I sit down at lunch, and I said, "Mr. Nicklaus," I said, "when was the first time you played here?" And he goes, 1957. I said, "Well, you were here before the trees." And he goes, "I told you so."
I told you so.
You know? And so it was like, when you played with him, it was like you were walking with the guy who almost invented the game.
No, there's no doubt. There's no doubt.
You know,
He's synonymous with the name of golf.
It's Tiger Woods and Nicklaus, the two greatest players of all time. But Jack's really his record and just him in general and everything he's done for the game. It's really cool to have that, you know, small little bit of relationship.
It's got to be
with
amazing, though.
Yeah.
And hey, I want to go back to your career, because you had your heyday was the '90s. What moment stands out to you as the one like that you the most proud of?
Getting on tour was a tough task in itself. I mean, back then there weren't as many options as there are now.
Right.
And so getting on tour in my rookie year, I was nominated for Rookie of the Year. Phil Mickelson and I both, neither one of us won. And just realizing a dream came true.
Right.
Now the disappointment was that
Honey Badger.
The Honey Badger. Yeah, it's all New Orleans show tonight.
All right. That's funny.
But,
there's Phil.
Yeah, that's a little bit later. You can see how the buffet line's starting to get to me.
No, I hear you. He came back down.
Yeah, I had some really great moments. I got to play in 5 U.S. Opens. I got to play with I got to play with Tiger Woods right before he won the Masters.
Was that '97 U.S. Open?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that real quick.
Well, no.
Or the '96 Las Vegas Invitational?
I gave him his first win.
Well, Las Vegas Invitational, we got a lot to talk about. So let's do that '97 U.S. Open, because we have a thing. You were tied with Tiger.
96 Las Vegas Invitational.
Well, okay, you want to go to that one?
Yeah.
Because I was going with 97. 96, that's your highest finish. You're third that year.
Yeah,
I think just 2 strokes behind. If you look at this card, look at it closely. Kelly beat Tiger in 3 of those 4 days. That round 2 is what got him.
So the internet's wrong there. Let me tell you what's wrong with that. That it was 5 rounds, and I actually shot 65 in the 5th round. And Tiger was playing in the group behind me. I was playing with Mark Calcavecchia, and Davis Love was playing with Ronnie Billack.
Look at every name. Everybody's famous on that list.
Yeah.
I mean, not saying you're not, but.
So I hit it in the water on the 16th hole, and I 3-putted the 17th hole. My dad threw his shoe at the television and went out on the back porch, and I wound up missing the playoff by 1 shot. But I shot 365s in a row.
Dude, I mean,
so nobody's ever done that before, probably.
That's crazy.
You finish a tournament with 365s and you still don't get in a playoff or win the event. But the bad part about this whole story is, I tell this story probably 1,000,000 times.
Okay.
Is that they replay it on ESPN2 every year because it's Tiger's first win.
Yes.
And so it's an ESPN classic. So every year during Las Vegas week, they replay the whole last 2 rounds.
Wow.
And here I am getting texts from all my friends going like, hey, lay up on the 16th hole this year, and the putt breaks a little left on 17. If you hit it a little
You
firm.
were getting texts back then?
No. I get them every year since then.
Oh, then I'm about to say.
And they rub it in, and all my friends are going like, if you hit the putt a little firmer on 17, you might win the tournament this year.
That's pretty funny.
And I'm always saying like, hey, please turn it off. It ends the same way for the last 22 years or whatever, 26 years now. But yeah, it was a big moment in my career. I thought I was on the right path there, and then 97, I didn't play terribly bad. I just couldn't get into a position.
This is the 97 Congressional, right? In D.C.?
Yeah.
Or Maryland, actually. But yeah, talk about that, because this is the one I was getting confused. This is the one you were in the top 10 of the U.S. freaking Open at the end of the first 2 days. Yeah,
I was right there. On Saturday, I remember I was like in 8th place. I remember some of the good and the bad, but I remember trying to go for the 9th green and 2.
I see right there. And
there
then
is
we'll
8th
show
place.
the next one. You're going to see Tiger Woods. You're tied right there with a bunch of people.
Yeah. So it was a good moment. I really, there was a couple of things that stand out about that tournament. I made a little bit of a mistake on the 9th hole during the 3rd round. I was playing with Scott Hoke, and I tried to go for the green with a driver off the deck. And my ego got in the way because nobody had ever hit the green in 2, and I was within strike zone. I was a long hitter, and I was like, so here I am in the middle of U.S. Open
so you just went
trying
for
to
it.
do stuff. So I went for it, which I probably shouldn't have done.
10
but
cup?
I hit it about 15 yards. I fatted it so bad, and then I hit a 3-iron to about 20 feet, and I 3-putted. So it didn't. It turned out to be kind of funny, but I wound up shooting, I think, 72 that day, and then the last day, I was in position. If I'd have finished in the top 16, I would have got in Augusta. And probably one of the biggest disappointments.
That would have been,
from a guy from New Orleans, growing up in the South, that was like going to church, right?
Of course, man.
Unfortunately, I missed it probably 6 times or so, where I had the year before in the 96 U.S. Open, I was in contention to get into the top 16. And I think I shot a pair of 75s, like 96, I shot 75 or 6 on Sunday, and the same thing happened that year. I remember we were playing with Lauren Roberts, and we got put on the clock on the 7th hole by the USGA rules officials for pace of play, and we didn't get off till the 16th tee. And that's stressful during the U.S. Open. And I remember he shot 72 and made it just in the top 16, and he was doing this in the scores 10, and I was one that hit him in the head because we were both playing probably not great, but he was a little slower than me that day. He was, and so I was a little bit upset. But I had a great career. It was a long career. I made 169 cuts. I joke about it a lot because there's no if I become too bitter about it, it'll consume me.
It'll eat you up, yeah.
Yeah.
What could have been?
Yeah, but it was, coming from New Orleans, growing up in Algiers, playing my golf at Bayou Berry and making it to the PGA Tour.
It's unbelievable.
I think I beat the odds quite a bit.
You were top 70 in money one year, and then the next year like top 90. But I remember back at De La Salle, I was on the Quiz Bowl team. I think the only reason I was because I loved presidential history. I knew everything. But you've met several presidents. Do you know how many presidents you've met? I mean,
it's probably let's see. I've met George H., George W., Gerald Ford, President Clinton.
That's
Donald Trump.
That's 5 right there. I mean, most people don't ever get to meet any of them, but you don't just meet them. You got pictures that are legitimate conversations.
This was one of the coolest stories I tell. That this is from the 1994 Bob Hope. I shot.
If it's Clinton's involved, we might need this.
Oh no, this.
We can tell this one. Okay.
This one takes a while. The secondary story to this is awesome. But I was leading the tournament, and the day before the first round, the Secret Service were following me around during the practice round, and I used to let my caddies hit when nobody was around, and we would gamble. And I'd let the caddy. I had a caddy that was a pro golfer, and so the Secret Service were mesmerized by my caddy gambling against. So I offered to let them hit, and they were like, "Really?" And so a couple of them go, "Nah, we're going to get fired if we do that." I said, "Well, nobody's out here watching y'all. Practice round." And so I shoot 65, and the head of the counter assault team for the White House, a gentleman by the name of Tom Poitras, came up and said, "Do you want to meet the 3 presidents?" And I kind of looked around. I was in the clubhouse. I go, "Absolutely."
I mean, come on now.
The first guy in was George H. Bush, and
What a gentleman.
He was
What a
rattled.
gentleman he is,
He was
though.
he was rattled because he had duck hooked his tee shot on the opening hole and hit a lady right in the head.
Oh, my goodness.
And she was bleeding. I was on the 15th green, and I mean we could see it. There was blood everywhere. So he played the whole day rattled.
I'm sure.
Right.
I'm
and
sure.
so he comes in that picture right there. He had asked for a Miller Lite.
About to say, I hope he had something to drink.
He asked for one. I told the Secret Service guy, yeah, bring me one too. Because I didn't want to be like rude to the president. And so they didn't bring me one, but they took his beer away before he started taking pictures. He couldn't have been nicer. It was telling me about his round. And,
That's interesting
and
how politicians do
And
that.
then the second guy, Gerald Ford, really didn't say much. Took a picture and kind of exit. Bill Clinton was the sitting president. He was like, hey, Kelly, New Orleans is my favorite town, Cafe Du Monde. I mean, he started rattling off restaurants.
He's got his
and
arm
he was
around you. He's hanging
he's
out.
going like, you made 8 birdies today. Like they prepped him before that, and it turned into, sort of a PR event for me. And
He's good off the cuff.
it
too.
was really cool. I wound up getting invited. I was invited to the White House, I believe, 6 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
To just do tours. Like,
Sure, man.
Got to bring my mom and my brother up there one time. And
Very cool.
Cool experience. I became really good friends with the Secret Service, and they gave us the tour underneath the White House. The whole thing was cool. And then one of the guys, Tom Poitras, he wound up caddying for me like about 5 times on the PGA Tour.
Well, D.C., I lived there for 4 years and worked in the Senate. My favorite place to go. I love it. Hey, I want to show a shot of you back from college because this is my favorite. I knew him in high school. This college shot, the hair is just exquisite.
Boy, I wish I had that.
I
back.
mean, that right there. Like, tell me about those days.
That was that was it right
That's
there.
your college shot, huh?
1982.
There you go, baby.
Man, I wish I had that hair right now. But yeah, so I went to Lamar University.
Yeah.
And it was a little bit.
De La Salle was a power back then.
Yeah.
Right. They were putting golfers out nonstop.
From our team at De La Salle, from 80 to 82, we put 6 guys in Division I scholarships, full rides.
Wow.
And I wound up turning down a lot of SEC schools, Mississippi State, Ole Miss, LSU, to go to Lamar, and everybody's like, why'd you choose there? They had a brand new driving range.
Nice.
And they had a brand new apartment complex about 70 yards from the driving range.
Very nice.
And I could see right out the window to see who was practicing, and I wasn't going to let anybody out practice me. And so we had lights, so you could practice till 10:30 at night, and that's what caught my attention. Plus, on the visit, all the guys on the team were really golf focused.
Right.
They weren't going there for fraternities and all that stuff. They were going there to pursue a college degree, but also we really wanted to be good in golf. And we wound up, from the time I was at Lamar, we wound up putting 5 guys from our team on the PGA Tour.
That's unbelievable.
Which is really unheard of, and especially for a school that size.
And I remember last time you were here, I'm not going to get too much into it now because I want to get to the courses. Tommy Moore was arguably one of the greatest golfers ever to come out of New Orleans.
Yeah.
Y'all had a close relationship. He passed away 25 years ago, but I know he is into your heart, and he always will be. But let's talk about there he is right there.
Yeah.
And I'd be remiss not to show him. He was my big brother at De La Salle. #1 player, I think, in high school coming out in the country. But he was just a great guy.
He was truly amazing. One of a kind guy, and he was the #1 ranked player in the world in '79 and 1980, and he went on
Junior,
to go
right?
junior.
Yeah.
So he was that was the first time they ever ranked a junior.
Yes.
They came out with this ranking and said, who's the best junior golfer in the world? And it was him. And so it was easy,
crazy.
like when we talk about sports idols, right? So for me, it was pretty easy. It was Pete Maravich, Archie Manning.
Those are my top 2.
My dad, my mom, and Tommy Moore. But Tommy Moore was like my mentor, but he was only 2 years older than me. However, he was mature, and everybody looked up to him. And he was just the guy that sort of revolutionized junior golf. He carried about 30 of us in this market to collegiate level golf.
Right.
Which you're always looking for, like that next Bobby Fischer, they say, the movie.
Sure.
Well, he was that guy, and he went on to Oklahoma State and was a four-year academic All-American, real smart guy, and then he was a 2-time playing All-American. And if it wasn't for him, I tell this story quite a bit. He told his coach, look, you need to go follow this kid that played on my high school team. He hits the ball really long. And the day Coach Mike Holder, who was the #1 coach in college, he showed up and followed me. And I shot 70 that day down in Florida. And
good day.
The next day, there were 6 college coaches standing on the tee waiting for me.
That's awesome.
And
I didn't know
all
that
because
story.
of Tommy Moore, my collegiate recruiting went from like local schools to national overnight. And that's how it happened.
That's amazing. I know he's looking down on you and proud of his friend.
Yeah.
I want to get real quick, because I don't have a ton of time left, but I want to talk about the courses you're doing, because I think this is unbelievable. Like the thing in Ireland with Hogshead.
Yeah.
Tell us about that real quick.
Well, I was very fortunate. I've done a lot of great work with my charitable endeavors in New Orleans and the Gulf Coast, and I met a gentleman by the name of Brian Marcel, and he runs a global consulting firm called Alvarez and Marcel, and very passionate golfers, the two chairmen, Tony Alvarez and Brian Marcel. And they saw what I was doing in New Orleans, but they also saw how it helped develop the Floridian for Jim Crane, the gentleman that owns the Houston Astros, had bought a course from Wade Huizinga down in Stuart, Florida area.
Nice.
And I was brought in by one of my college teammates, Giles Kidby, to help redevelop the property and sort of go through the reconstruction project. And I had done post-Katrina, when my career sort of came to an end, I had built a team to redo Joe Bartholomew Golf Course here in New Orleans. And I got my first, sort of, I guess, part of this came from the TPC Louisiana, working with Pete Dye. I learned just enough to have a conversation.
Right.
And then I went on and I looked at the post-Katrina landscape and knew that there were 8 courses destroyed. And I knew with my PGA Tour credentials, I could build a team.
Nice.
Now, I don't always try, I'm never the smartest guy in the room.
Right.
But I know the smartest guy.
That's the key.
And so I usually try to surround myself with all smart guys, because it makes me look better, right?
Well, you're the minister of fun.
Yeah, there
Come
you
on.
go. There you go. So I'm good at recruiting talent.
Nice.
And what I do is I try to build good teams, and then by that product we have success. So, it was good for me to do the Floridian. Brian Marcel saw what I did at the Floridian. He had bought this piece of property in Ireland during the recession and said, I want you to come over there and help me develop it. We got it finished in 2018, and once we got it finished, I invited the Golf Channel over to do sort of a story about how this came about, because it is really a bucket list type place to visit.
Well,
and
I heard.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Two of my best friends from college just went with you, Lester Mitz and Joe Douglas. They couldn't stop raving about the course and you.
Yeah, and Lester's name's already on the wall because he won the.
God.
I
can only imagine.
Dallas Howe.
Did he win something?
Yeah, he won the member guest, and he made about a 15-footer.
This past trip?
No, it was 2018.
I think I heard the story.
Yeah,
okay,
and in front of about 100 people, he knocks it right in. It was epic, and we had that whole Dallas Howe.
And he's going to love that we brought him up.
Oh yeah, he's the greatest.
You do so much to help others. We're going to get into that, because when the British Open, when that comes around, I want to have you be a golf analyst so we can talk about guys like Scotty Scheffler and, obviously Sam Burns, who's my good friend's son-in-law.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy small world.
He had a great weekend.
This is Task. I think you got a couple of these from me before, but we'd like to give these to our guests, and I'm going to give you a couple of the new ones. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, buddy, man. I appreciate everything you do for the kids. I know you have foundations, everything you do for the city of New Orleans, and we're all very thankful.
Thank you for having me on today.
That's Kelly Gibson right there, and we're going to have him back as an analyst and talk about the current golfers, like I just said. But coming up next, we're going to get into some Saints, some Pelicans, some LSU Tigers, and all that. I've got Fletcher Mackel from WDSU Channel 6 coming up next right here.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At the mid-city lanes, the home of rock and roll.
Fall in love with autumn with PJ's new seasonal lattes. Our pumpkin latte brings you all the flavors of a pumpkin pie with hints of cinnamon and nutmeg, like your favorite holiday dessert in a cup. And our s'mores latte with flavors of toasted marshmallows, warm milk chocolate, and graham cracker cinnamon is sure to bring back campfire memories. The PJ's Fall Seasonal Lattes, available at your local PJ's only for a limited time.
Hey, don't forget my pimento cheese.
Of course. It's okay. I'll take it from here. Hey, you forgot your seat.
For the love love of Palmetto cheese.
Frenchie's Art Gallery, located on historic Oak Street beside the Maple Leaf Bar. With over 3,000 square feet of space, it features a large gallery front room and Frenchie's personal art studio. Frenchie's Art Gallery is also connected to the Maple Leaf Courtyard, which is ideal for the New Orleans night scene. Frenchie's Art Gallery, 8314 Oak Street. Yeah, you're right.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. What a great interview with Kelly Gibson. Love him. Can't wait for him to come back and we'll talk to him about the current golfers. Right now, I want to get into what you guys love the most here. The New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Pelicans, LSU Tigers, and a little Tulane, UNO, all that too. But Fletcher Mackel, my guest, he's with Channel 6. You know, the reason I want to bring you on, brother, is because you and my next guest, Lyons, Yellin, y'all were the main media dudes I brought. I mean, I had everybody eventually, but I didn't do a ton of media because I used to have coaches and players. But I always enjoyed you taking. I wanted you to come back. It's only my third show back, so welcome.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Sorry I didn't dress up like Kelly. Kelly looked all fancy.
Well, let's get a shot at the shoes and the jeans. I love it.
Yeah. So I remember the desk, and then I forgot that this is not a desk. So
Eric's show.
Right. The T-shirt was bad enough. Then I put the jacket on. Then I realized, wait, no socks and jeans, and I do have like these shoes that my mom got me for Christmas that I'm a big fan of.
Those are cool, man.
Yeah.
You look good.
These are like, what are they? Steve Nash. I forgot the name of the brand, but he like endorses them.
Steve Nash does?
Yeah, Steve Nash. So I just call them the Steve Nash shoes.
Another De La Salle guy. I know all my Jesuit Rumble and Brother Martin friends will be very upset that I'm showing favoritism, but you know, sorry. We got a Newman guy next. So
all uptown though.
All within a 3-block radius.
Yeah.
That's right. Because Brady Livingston was supposed to be. He also went to Newman, but he couldn't do it. I want to talk about. Let's talk last time I saw you because COVID.
Yeah.
I think you were. I went to your house to give you a rugby ball.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
And,
still on the mantle.
Well,
yeah,
I have a couple shots. There it is in the background. The rugby ball and. But you did this for quite a while during COVID. I mean, like you were doing
over
it from
a year.
home.
Over a year, and it's amazing how it morphed from like the small ring light sitting down to that's the office at my house.
Right.
And I just started accumulating more stuff. So I had the De La Salle football helmet, and Derek Panamsky, who went to De La Salle, who was with Coach Ogeron,
right.
He goes, you need an LSU football helmet.
Right.
So he sent me one. Travers had a Tulane football helmet and goes, if you have LSU, you got to have Tulane. You gave me the.
Because I saw that and I'm like,
yeah.
I was
it
with
was
the
just
Nola
the funniest
Gold
thing. I had those Pelicans, the Hornets jersey, and then the Pelicans jersey, and some small sports memorabilia up there, like pictures and the Marucci bat from Loyola.
I was about to say Loyola or Delgado.
And then the Saints on 6 from the WDSU Saints football. And then the other stuff just kind of, you know, as I was there for over a year, I'm like, well, let me make it look as good as possible. So I added more lighting and things like that. But I'm definitely glad to be back after spending a year plus at home doing sportscasts from my house.
I think our producer asked if that was cereal back there. I don't know.
It is a cereal box. It is. So it's the LSU Tigers. Behind the computer on my left, on the right of the screen, is an LSU national championship. Like they did a special cereal.
I see now. Okay.
A special cereal for LSU national championship. So I got that, and I'm like, you know what? Let me just throw it on here too. It's sports memorabilia.
That's funny. I have those beers and Coca-Colas from LSU. And like my kids come in and they started rating. I'm like, whoa, that's in the bag for a reason. Don't
souvenir.
20 years from now, you're gonna be glad you have that. Like, Dad, we'd rather drink it now. All right. So hey, I want to talk about the Saints. What's going on? Because I personally, when I look at this team, you know, other than quarterback, and I'm not anti-Jameis like a lot of people are, but other than quarterback, I think. If you talk about positions, and I'm not talking about, I mentioned this with Bobby Abreu, I'm not talking about just like offensive guard or offensive tackle. The offensive line, the defensive line as a unit, I think the Saints, you could argue they're in the top third at each position unit in the league, other than quarterback. And I want your take on that.
So I'll say this about the Saints. I think it's good that they're in the NFC and not the AFC.
No doubt.
Because the AFC, I can make an argument for 14 teams in the AFC winning the Super Bowl. In the NFC,
well, that might be an exaggeration.
But there's a lot of good teams in the AFC.
There are.
I mean, like the Denver Broncos think they're a Super Bowl.
14 out of 16 aren't going to have.
No, but there's literally 14 teams. You know, besides maybe the Jets. Like, I mean, think about it. And I don't want to go through them all, but there's a lot of teams.
Every quarterback seems to be over there now.
In the AFC, I mean, Miami thinks they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, may be.
Buffalo thinks they're a legitimate contender. New England thinks they're a legitimate contender. And again, they all want to win.
You might be right, actually. When I think about these
that's
teams.
like 13 or 14
because the AFC
teams.
West has got 4 amazing quarterbacks.
Right, that's what I mean. And you look at like all these teams in the AFC, and you go, I mean, even like Pittsburgh, if you want to cut them out because of the quarterback, they still made the playoffs last year. And you look at the rest of their division, and you go, wow, the other teams are all just kind of loaded. But in the NFC, I look at it and I go, well, the Rams are, I think, the best still because of the Super Bowl champs. Then I certainly look at Tampa with Tom Brady coming back, and then Green Bay, and then like who? Maybe Dallas. Like I could make an argument that the Saints are the 4th best team in the NFC based on what you're saying. Now, that being said, quarterback is the most important position
It certainly is.
on the team. And I am not a Jameis. I'm going to hedge here. I am not a Jameis hater. I hate the people that hate Jameis, but I am not one of these people that is ready to anoint Jameis
No, I'm not either.
as some savior.
We're the same way.
There's people that are out there that are so on the Jameis hype train right now, and I just don't get it. I look at the Saints like this. I look at the Saints and see parallels to San Francisco last year. San Francisco was loaded last year. I mean, their tight ends, you know, the skill position guys they had, their defense up front was awesome, and they had a good quarterback.
Yeah.
And they got into the playoffs at 10-7, but once they got in, they were able to pull off a few upsets. They were able to beat the Cardinals. Then they went to Dallas.
Not to mention they were 17-0 behind just to get into the playoffs and take the Saints out.
So they were able to go to Dallas and upset Dallas. They were able to go to Green Bay and upset Green Bay.
Right.
Not because of their quarterback, but because their team was so good. So I could see the Saints having a season similar last year to the San Francisco 49ers. Their team is so good and their quarterback is good. Garoppolo had good and bad moments, and he's not a great quarterback, but they're a really good team around him. That's how I look at the 2022 Saints. Everything you're saying on paper tells me if they're healthy, all of their units are probably top 3 to 5, and the quarterback just has to be good, and they will be in the playoffs with a chance to maybe make a run in the NFC.
Well, I think that's what I'm saying, and people are sleeping on them. I think before we got Jarvis Landry and Honey Badger, it was over and under on wins is 7.5, and this is a 17-game schedule. I mean, that's disrespectful to me, but then again, I guess they're just looking at that one position, quarterback. But here's what the argument you just said about Garoppolo. There's only been like 3 or 4 average quarterbacks, Brad Johnson, Trent Dilfer, Hostetler, that won Super Bowls, right? But there's been about 20 that have made it that you could look at Garoppolo, guys that are just.
Jake Delhomme was in that category. I mean, I like Jake Delhomme,
but there's a ton of
good, not great, that made it to the Super Bowl and didn't win the Super Bowl.
No doubt.
You're absolutely right. So the Saints, like last year, if the Niners would have gotten into the Super Bowl, we'd have been saying, look, Garoppolo already went to a Super Bowl, and everybody looks at him as like a good, not great quarterback. So I agree with you too. I think people outside of the 504 are not high on the Saints, and I think people here should be higher on them because I like Dennis Allen. I think he's going to do much better with the second chance. I like the roster, but I will say this. For the people taking myself out of it and trying to be an unbiased, observer of it, Dennis Allen may not be Sean Payton and did not have good success, even though Oakland at the time was an abomination and nobody could have won there. Is Michael Thomas still going to be a really elite player after missing 2 years?
Big question.
Are DeMario Davis and Cam Jordan going to hit the wrong side of their careers? Is Alvin Kamara going to miss any time? Is the offensive line going to stay healthy? Is Cesar Ruiz going to be a guy? So there's a lot of ifs on this team that I can see why people outside of New Orleans say all of those ifs lead up to 8-9, 9-8 playoff season.
There's no doubt.
I understand people being, not down on the Saints. Nobody thinks the Saints are going 4-13, but I also don't think you're going to find a lot of people that think they're going to go 12-5 either. I think they're going to end up somewhere. I think they're going to end up at 10-7 and get into the playoffs. And once the playoffs start, they have a chance, just like San Francisco did last year.
10-7, 11-6 is what I've been telling people. Let me just say this. I love you play devil's advocate. I'm going to play it a little bit the other way. Your 3 best receivers last year, Marquez Callaway, Traquan Smith, Deontay Harris. You go outside of the 504, you cross the Mississippi River into Mississippi or whatever. Nobody knows who these guys are. Now all of a sudden you got the 2019 Offensive Player of the Year in the NFL, Michael Thomas. Now 2 years is a long time. We'll see how good he is, but he's still young. You got Jarvis Landry,
5-time Pro Bowler,
5-time Pro Bowler, who also, by the way, Jarvis Landry has NFL record for most catches in the first 3 years, first 4 years, and first 5 years in the league. You also got the rookie that you moved up to get, which is the speed. Doug Marrone lives in my building. I've known him for 25 years from his days at Georgia. And right before the draft, he says there's 2 things we need. We need a really good tackle, and we need a receiver that can burst long. And I said, if we get those 2, I think we're going to be fine on offense. And that's what they did. They went out and got that guy who's known as a great route runner. So at me playing devil's advocate, you talk about this offense that Jameis had the weapons this year he's going to have compared to what he dealt with last year.
Yeah, look, I agree. Last year, I mean, you're talking about the guy who was the #1 receiver last year is going to be at best your 4th or 5th receiver this year, and that's probably what he should be. I mean, Marquez Callaway is probably your 4th or 5th receiver in the league. Traquan Smith was your #2 the year before, same thing, maybe 2 or 3, and he's going to be 4 or 5 now. I mean, I think that means that room has tremendous depth and is very, very good. So I agree 110%. I think on paper, this team is ready to go. But those are questions. Michael Thomas has had 2 significant surgeries, and he's 2 years removed from being, the NFL Offensive Player of the Year. And his game wasn't electric to begin with. So how are those injuries going to affect him? That's what I'm curious about. Is Doug Marrone, who is a fantastic offensive line coach, going to get the best out of Cesar Ruiz? Is Penning going to be able right away to step in at left tackle and do what Teron Armstead did for so many years here? Again, you can spin it either way. The one thing I would say about Jameis is this. Jameis, I think, is much more mature of a man. I think he's definitely gotten better as, less of a gambler, so to say, at quarterback. But I still have a tough time reconciling that, Jameis had a team that was pretty similar to Tom Brady's team, and they missed the playoffs every year he was there. And Tom Brady showed up. And look, they had some bumps in the road with he and Bruce Arians, but Brady took that team to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, again, I still question what is Jameis' ceiling. I think his floor has moved up because he's learned to be a better quarterback, but I still don't know what his ceiling is.
I want to make this part brief because I want to get to the Pelicans. I know you love basketball. Honey Badger, what kind of effect can he have on this team on the field and in the locker room?
I think he's Malcolm Jenkins take 2. And I think Malcolm Jenkins, people didn't appreciate how good he was the last 2 years in the locker room and on the field. I think Malcolm Jenkins is a fantastic player, was a fantastic player. I think Tyrann Mathieu can do the exact same thing and maybe has a little bit more tread on the tires, so to say. I think Tyrann could still potentially find a gear to become a Pro Bowler or an All-Pro. Malcolm, I think those days were past him of being a Pro Bowler, but was still played 100% of the snaps here and was integral for this defense and huge in the locker room. I think, talk about floor and ceiling, his floor is Malcolm Jenkins, and his ceiling is what we saw his best years in Kansas City.
And he's already been a good influence. You can see that. Hey, so we're having some hope. Is that what we're saying? We got some hope this season?
Sure, I think the Saints are going to the playoffs. Because
I saw some games last year. I'm going to finish this with football. But some games last year, being in the booth with Haas and Deuce, it was just a helpless feeling that I haven't felt since the days of Guido Merkins back in 1984. When that time he quarterbacked that one game, and I'm watching it. I was in college. I come down and they couldn't get past the 30-yard line, their own 30. I mean, it was that helpless at that Monday night game against the Dolphins and some of these. It was hard to watch. So at least we'll get some excitement back in that offense, hopefully. As far as the Pelicans, talk about hope and what's going on right now. From the beginning of the season through maybe, Christmas, it was just like, oh my goodness, can we even hold on to this team as a franchise in New Orleans? And all of a sudden, fast forward 4 months later, and all of a sudden everybody's talking about us on ESPN, all the talk shows that never talked about them. Look at this team, New Orleans, man. Next year, if Zion comes back, so you love basketball. I want your take on what the dynamic is and what's going on over there.
So I'm glad you referenced what happened earlier in the season because, look, I have a lot of friends that work in the national media, and I respect a ton of them, but I just despise the fact that they constantly brought up, could this team stay here? Could they leave?
I hate it.
Because Gail Benson has been as transparent as can be.
Right.
She is never selling this team. As long as she is alive and well, this team will be here in New Orleans. So anybody that wants to continue to beat that drum is just foolish in doing it for their own personal gratification or for clicks or likes or comments. So that's it. As far as
let's get on the Pels now.
Yeah, but as far as the team itself, I see a lot of hope and promise on this team. Look, they had a fantastic rookie class. You're looking at one of them right now in Jose Alvarado.
You wore the jersey. I think a lot of people didn't know who Jose Alvarado was.
People didn't know who he was.
No, this is true. And I'm like, I'm watching this. I watched this live, and I'm like, how cool is that? The guy shows up and says, I couldn't believe someone's wearing my jersey.
Yeah, it was great. And so look, getting C.J. McCollum, I think, was a coup for this team.
Huge.
I think the biggest question now is going to be the guy you see in the picture right now is Zion Williamson.
Right.
If he is back healthy and engaged. If you add an all-star who is doing historic things in his second year to a team with CJ and B.I. and Jonas and Herb in this rookie class and Trey Murphy, I think they potentially can do what Memphis did. Memphis went from the 9 seed in a play-in to the 2 seed in a legit contender. They can be the bubble Suns. The bubble Suns were really good to finish the season in the bubble, got Chris Paul, and then we're in the finals. So to me, there's a blueprint for the last 2 years of what this team can be, but it is contingent on Zion being healthy and focused and engaged, because I think this team without Zion is a fringe playoff team, or maybe a playoff team, a 6 or a 7 seed. But you add Zion in the all-star Zion we saw to this mix, and you have a team that, to me, Stephen A. Smith said it on ESPN, and people left, and I thought he was right. If you add Zion to this team,
I just saw it.
They can come out of the Western Conference. I mean, I think they're better than the Mavericks, and the Mavericks are in the Western Conference Finals, or were in the Western Conference Finals. So I think that the future is bright if this team is back healthy and if Zion is back healthy.
You see Herb Jones right there, which I love. During the thing, I'm following NBA players' tweets, like, guys that aren't playing that night. Draymond Green's like, this Herbie Jones can play. I mean, these guys were unsung coming in. Trey Murphy, those people didn't know a lot about him. And he went to UVA, went to Rice before that.
Sure.
And, of course, Herb Jones was, even though he was SEC Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year, not a lot of people knew him. He was a second-round pick. So that nucleus of guys that are hungry and seem to love each other and have fun, it's a contagious thing.
It's the biggest thing, because it was always, who wants to go to New Orleans? Who wants to be in New Orleans? How soon can guys get out of New Orleans? Chris Paul was like that his first few years. He was all in. But towards the end, after year 3 or 4, you heard the chirping from his camp about, does he want to be here when guys were going to start?
There's always that camp chirp.
Anthony Davis seemingly had 1 foot out the door after year 3. You don't hear that right now. You hear these rookies saying how much they want to be here. That's the biggest thing David Griffin and Trajan Langdon and Swing Cash have built here, is the want to be here. C.J. McCollum showing up and saying, I wanted to be here. Like, having a guy that has that kind of power in the Players Association being here and saying what he's saying, and then having the rookie players, you've changed the culture. I said the parallel, I know I got to go. The parallel was this: nobody wanted to be in New Orleans until Sean Payton and Drew Brees got here and changed it. Nobody really wanted to be here in New Orleans with the Pelicans.
No doubt.
I think that's going to change going forward, starting now.
I remember being on radio shows when I lived in Atlanta working in the NBA, talking to several people saying, listen, unfortunately, it's not a destination place. It isn't. As much as I love the city, I was gone for 29 years, and I couldn't wait to get back. It's not. I was an NBA agent. I was like, they're not the first place. They're not talking about New Orleans. I'm sorry. Even with Chris Paul and they had that thing going in 2008. I said that's going to need some longevity. I think this has potential now. I'm not letting you go. No, you don't have to go, because I want to ask you real quick about what's going on at LSU, and just do a blanket statement about the new basketball coach, new football coach, new baseball coach, and new women's basketball coach. Scott Woodward has brought his own stamp on this university. What do you think about it?
Sure. Look, I don't think it's a surprise. You get a new AD, you get a lot of new coaches. It happens at a lot of universities around the country. He's a big name hunter, and he's landed. I mean, Kim Mulkey's a fantastic hire. Brian Kelly, we'll see. I think eventually he's going to have great success. I don't know if it's coming this year or next year, but I do think Brian Kelly is a really good coach who's going to do well here. Jay Johnson, I interviewed yesterday. He's as laid back as can be.
It was great.
He's laid back.
I love Jay, by the way.
Yeah, he's as laid back as can be, and I think he's a really good baseball coach. And I think his team has. I don't think they're making a run this year. I don't think they have the pitching to get to Omaha this year.
No, they don't have.
Look, I like Mackel Hilliard a lot, but when he's your number one, that does not scream Omaha. And so
not like Peyton Manning, Omaha.
Right. So again, but I do think Scott Woodward, this is his program, and he's had a lot of success where he's been. And so, yeah, I can't wait to see in a couple of years how his coaches. I think Mulkey's going to maybe be the best of the bunch, though, to be honest with you.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun. Excitement in New Orleans and Baton Rouge. And hey, you've had a few of these from here. And this is Taz's performance.
It's been a couple of years, so I needed a new one.
I'm going to fake give you that because I only got a couple, but I'm going to give you 2 more in return. That are going to be better.
Okay.
But Fletcher, I appreciate you so much. Thank you once again, man.
Thank you.
That was great. And Fletcher was a frequent guest when I had the show before COVID. I wanted to bring him back as my first media guy coming back after COVID. Hey, we got one more guy that used to come on quite a bit. He's not in the media anymore, but he was with WWL for a while, and he came on this show quite frequently. His name's Lyons Yellin. We'll be right back on Primetime Sports. Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. Hey, I want to thank Fletcher. And like Fletcher, my next guest is a guy that I had on a lot. I don't do a lot of media. Eric Asher's great show does that. He has media guests. We prefer doing coaches and players, former, current. But there's some guys that, you know, have been on here a lot. And other than John Brady, the former coach at LSU, my next guest has definitely been on more than anybody else. His name is Lyons Yellin, and former WLAE-TV reporter and anchor.
Retired.
You're all retired. I mean, you live in the life of Riley. A lot has happened since the last time you were on. You got married.
I did.
You're going to have a baby soon. So talk about life since then.
Man, life has been great. I mean, obviously people have been affected by COVID over the last couple of years and dealing with all that. But man, I really just have been happier than ever.
You look it.
Found the love of my life. We're having a child. We're having a boy here in August. So we're excited about that. And man, I'm excited.
That is so amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say this. I've known him. I've been running with you since 2014. And for him to utter those words, to love his life, and he truly is. From the moment he met her 2 years ago, he said that. And then now he's married a year ago. So congratulations. That's the first show ever.
What a blast.
That was 6 years, 6.5 years ago almost. 6 years plus.
It's hard to believe. I mean, it feels like it was just yesterday. I mean, I walked into that studio to tape your show, and E.T. was there, who I didn't even know you knew.
The musician, the head of the Dirty Dozen brass band, right? And I've been good friends with him for years.
Good friend of mine. I've known him since, oh my God, dating back early 2000s when they were playing with Widespread Panic.
Obviously well known here.
Yeah.
Well, that show had Jabari Greer, Delvin Breaux, and they brought a big birthday cake out. Really, it was a cake for celebration, and champagne.
Yeah.
And so you were part of that moment, but you are one of the few people that's been in all four studios, because you know, I was at Loyal a bit before COVID. Then WWL had, WLE had a couple studios before. So this is your fourth. What do you think of the new dig?
I love it. I love the new place. It's full of light, full of life, and I wish you all the best in it. It looks fantastic.
We always had fun on air. I know we used to get a lot of comments of our rapport. We had fun, and I'm gonna have a little fun with you now.
Okay.
And you're in the bridal bliss business, the bliss bridal business, but the bridal business. And I'm gonna get to that in a second.
Okay.
But I'm gonna have some fun on a moment. I was thinking about, what if I talk to Lyons, because we're not going to do sports. You're not into sports anymore. I just brought you in for nostalgia and because you were good to me in the show.
Yeah, you know, it's been odd kind of transitioning away from covering sports on a daily basis and following every last detail of every team in the area, and then now being in business, having so many more things to focus on, and some of that stuff just gets kind of wiped away.
And you know, you don't have to be worried about if I'm the first, get the scoop.
Right.
But let's talk about an incident that happened in a locker room.
Okay.
You know where I'm going now?
I know where you're going.
I didn't tell him where I was going. So here's a video explaining what happened. That's your tweet back then. And Brandon Browner, who was a Super Bowl champion before that and after, actually, when he was with there he is with the second Super Bowl, getting into it with his former teammate who he won a Super Bowl with. That's obviously Richard Sherman. But Brandon Browner, that's when he's with the Patriots. But he won a Super Bowl with Seattle. He was perceived to be a big free agent, right?
Right.
And he just ended up being a big headache. Ironically, the other guy in that picture, Jarris Byrd, these are the two worst free agent pickups ever for the Saints. Jarris Byrd didn't have an attitude problem like Brandon, but he just didn't play very well. But you had a moment, I want you to talk about it, in the locker room, and I've never brought this up on air with you, but now that you're not in the media, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
So what happened? There was a little dust-up that you didn't realize was a dust-up. He just made a big deal out of it.
I didn't. It kind of, the whole situation didn't really blow up in my eyes until
start from the beginning.
left.
But let people know what happened.
So what happened?
I was in there and I heard it.
I was talking to Jarris Byrd about a play
in the locker room
when someone got behind him
after a Saints game.
Yes, after a Saints game.
Right.
But during the game, a receiver got behind him in coverage, and he made a flailing attempt. I think the ball bounced off his helmet.
Play. Yes.
And the guy caught it, ran for a touchdown. And I wanted to talk to Jarris Byrd about that play and why he wasn't behind the deepest receiver.
So you're not talking to Brandon Browner.
I'm not talking to him.
You're talking to
Jarris
Jarris Byrd.
Yes. And Browner gets into the conversation, very upset that I'm asking him about that.
Like he's just listening and he's steaming.
He's steaming about it. They had just lost. He's steaming about it and gets into that conversation and says, you know, don't ask that question. I was like, well, what do you want me to ask? And he's like,
what's the storyline? Tell me, Brandon.
Yeah, he's like, don't ask that. You can't ask that question. I was like, well, what do you want me to ask? And he said, well, not that one. I said, well, do you want to talk to me? He's like, no. I said, do you want to tell me what to ask you? And he just lost his mind because
That's
stood
what
up to him.
I think I started hearing it because I was on the way other side of the locker room, and I'm like, what is going on?
And all of a sudden, I was just standing there. He comes rushing towards me from about 2 lockers over, and 2 offensive linemen see him and grab him.
He's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, he was furious, and he was coming after me, and 2 offensive linemen grab him, drag him across the locker room out to the shower.
It was a crazy scene. And I've never, have you talked publicly about it much at all?
I mean, I made a video about it, and I don't think.
All right, because I've never talked to you about it.
Yeah, I don't think I've talked very publicly about it, but it was, I didn't realize it would turn into a thing until I came out of the locker room and I started getting contacted by the Washington Post and the New York Times, and people started tweeting about it, and then I started getting phone calls from the management at WWL saying, we have to do something about this. This is a big story.
Yeah.
So that was kind of how we decided to handle it, is to put out a video and explaining it. And
it was wild.
It was wild because as someone in the media, you typically don't want to make yourself part of the story.
No,
and I didn't want to do that.
You didn't really. I mean, he's the one that made it the story.
Right.
And he, by the way, if he's having a great year, it's one thing. He was most penalized in the league. This is
terrible.
Like he did say, but I accept being wrong today. But then when he left the Saints, he's like, yeah, I took all them chumps. I took all their money. It was just low class.
Yeah.
And, you know, he ended up winning a Super Bowl again with the Patriots, but he really didn't have a big part of that. But the thing is, he's not doing so well after this. You saw the temper things going on. He goes, took that few millions and ran with it. He's talking about his time with the weak Saints.
Right.
That's classy. But then I think he's had some problems. He's on TMZ Sports, and usually that's a mugshot there. And then he's had some temper issues. So you're not the only one.
Well,
hey, what's the one here? New Orleans.
San Quentin.
San Quentin. Oh, funny. That's his roster of teams, and then San Quentin. Not to make light. I hope he gets his life together. Maybe he has by then.
Yeah.
What do you miss most, though?
I'd say probably going to the events and covering the games, being right there in the action, and getting to know the players and the coaches and having a rapport with them. I'd say
camaraderie.
Yeah, I'd say that is different. Now I go to the games and I'm just sitting in the stands.
You get to
as
cheer.
A fan, I get to cheer and enjoy that.
And there you are looking with Hoda.
Yeah, with Hoda.
I mean, you got to see some cool people.
I got to see some great people on the way, meet some great people, and I mean, like going to the draft, covering that for Channel 4. I mean, they sent me to some wonderful places, and I got to cover some fantastic events, and I always had a blast doing that. So I'd say that's probably what I miss the most.
We got to wrap soon, but I want to get to this because we joked about you being retired. You're not really retired. You're just retired from sports. Tell people what you're doing now, because I think it's phenomenal.
Well, I'm the COO of Bliss Bridal, which is a bridal shop my wife started about 11 years ago, and we help.
Look, they're a new sponsor of the show,
Yeah,
Bliss Bridal.
we help women find the gowns for their day. We're an elegant Southern bridal boutique
on
Magazine Street here in New Orleans. We have one in Fairhope, Alabama, and one in Hattiesburg, Mississippi.
Look at you, man.
So I run the business operations, and she's the face of the company, and she's on the floor selling and making sure that everyone has a wonderful experience, and she's fantastic.
You're living near Fairhope right now, so I don't get to see you much. So you come in town when you visit this store, but it's always great to see you, and I can't thank you enough for all the shows you're on. I know this might be your last one on here, but I had fun with you, and I was feeling nostalgic, so I wanted to have you on. And here's a TAS shirt. You've had a few of these.
Thank you.
But I want to thank
my best friends from high school.
That's right. That's right. The Andrews family.
Yeah, the Andrews. That's right.
Todd, Scott, Cindy, and Al.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm so glad to be here and be back, and I'm so glad you're back on.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. That's Lyons Yellin, man. I want to thank him. I want to thank Fletcher Mackel and, of course, Kelly Gibson. We went away from football and that with the golfer, but I love having all sports represented here. We're going to do rugby. We're going to do it all. And next week, we're going to be right back here on Primetime Sports. Stay tuned.
I'll take it from here.
Hey, the guy, you're a seat.
For the love of palmetto cheese.